this is my Robb Stark list that focuses in on Tully Cavaliers. I did do a tactics video on this one that I've got in the description below if you want to learn more about it. That's where you're going to find a lot of the tips and tricks on this one. I am playing against Tyler, one of the early participants on this channel, but we just haven't been able to make our schedules link up really well. So I'll be doing the commentary for his Jeor Mormont list. That's basically the starter plus a Builder Scorpion crew. We are playing the 1.5 version of Game of Thrones, where the center objective is always neg2 panic and or neg2 to a panic check and double points. Then you also have to sit totally on the objective in order to claim it. But in terms of deployment, my Tully Cavaliers are in the center, so they can kind of pick and choose where they need to go when they need to go there. And the Sworn Swords are strategically placed to make sure they can get to the objectives that are in front of them. And for Tyler's side, the Sworn Brothers are bringing up the flank to try and collapse anything that would happen over there. He also has a very far out token on his side, or objective on his side. The Bolt Thrower's natural position is kind of in the middle, so that it can take some shots where it needs to. And the Rangers also kind of function in the same way in that they just want to be able to apply their marked target on their own, with their own, or the way they want to. So they're also in the middle, while Jeor is kind of going to be fighting over that corpse pile objective with the Sworn Swords, and more likely than not, the Tully Cavaliers over there. So I start out with Varys by taking the maneuver position, and don't worry, the commentary's not off. I'm just, it took a little while to explain kind of what I was doing here, so there's plenty of time for me to do some off-the-cuff stuff, it seems. So Varys took the maneuver, and normally I'd want to have the Tully Cavaliers move up first so that I could get some early charges with devastating impact, especially since I have Sansa to just go get it for me when I want it. But on this one, I figured it was more important to get the Sworn Swords on the bottom up further, because I do want to try and pull Jeor out of his corner. I don't want him trying to get the objective on his terms. I want him to have to respond to those Sworn Swords getting there first. That's going to bait him out at least, so that the Tully Cavaliers can go in and do what they need to do. They also have Greywind there to bring some vulnerable support in case they need it. For the next thing that I dropped was Sansa on the tactics position. Tyler didn't bring Bowen with him, so if I take that tactics position often, he's going to have a really difficult time trying to keep up with the momentum that I'll create with having a lot of Robb cards. And he is also going to have a hard time finding the exact vows he needs, unless it's Jeor's unit, because he can just go pitch a vow to go search for one. We did move the this objective that Tyler's claiming, because based on the way that I placed it, it seems like you cannot actually claim it unless you swing around a very specific way. So I didn't really feel like that was going to be great for this game. I mean, in normal circumstances, I wouldn't, but I think Tyler's is a little rusty and hasn't played in a while, so I didn't want to put him in a awkward position as to detract from the game by having me get free side charges on his Rangers because they had to claim the objective the way they claimed it. So I just adjusted it slightly. It wasn't my intention when I set up the terrain, it just kind of happened that way, so we went back and kind of fixed it. But my Sworn Swords are being quite aggressive while still trying to respect that Scorpion Bolt Thrower. That thing's going to hurt these guys quite a bit, and having Varys means that most of the time I'm probably going to be using it to try and shut that thing off from double tapping each turn, because I don't want to have to worry about my Sworn Swords getting peeled off by that thing. The Tully Cavaliers might not care too much because they have a better save in their cavalry, so they take a little bit longer to whittle down. So the Cavaliers that I just got done moving, they've taken kind of it's not an aggressive position, it's a very reactive position, where depending on where these Rangers go, the Tully Cavaliers are going to threat them, and I'm also kind of making it harder for the Scorpion Bolt Thrower to get me with the Palisade there. It's not completely denying line of sight, but it is something that can get in the way. It should protect me from some of the shots as the Tully Cavaliers kind of approach the middle of the table. But you can see now that Tyler's activating Jeor's unit, and he did go that full march, which I was really hoping would come out of that. I'd want to I want to see that unit getting aggressive. So now I can try and position things in a way to make it so that Jeor tries to get even more aggressive. Tyler has the top of the next turn, which is the turn that I prefer to have. I like to be the person who gets to go first, second, because I do play so aggressively. So I have to be a little bit more reserved with how I move things. I did check the distance for Greywind to see if Greywind could make it to the middle of that objective, and Greywind couldn't take it over completely, so I felt there was no reason to just throw my dog out there for nothing, and decided to keep him back. And over here, we were just kind of discussing which NCU should really be claiming which zone. Uh, with Craster having a lot more efficacy, being not taking zones to get their effect to go off. We just kind of worked out that Amon should be taking the coin if Tyler wants to get rid of the weakened token that was on Jeor's unit, which I kind of expected was going to happen anyways because I kind of gave him full run of the board. But it does mean that the crown gets a little less attractive for him, but he sees through my garbage and goes for it. Even with the -2, the one from the corpse pile and then the one from the crown, the Sworn Swords still pass it, and especially with that buff from the Tully Cavaliers, they definitely get to where they need to be. So now I'm trying to negotiate where do I put the second unit of Tully Cavaliers. I could move them up so they're over the wall, because there's not a whole lot over there threatening me other than that bolt thrower, but there's I still want to leave some of the wall out in case like a watcher on the wall happens or something, where someone can get into those Tully Cavaliers before they actually really get their chance to do anything. So I feel like I'm in a position enough to where I can get off the wall if I need to charge off of it, but I still have the ability to be protected by it. So I just put down a few measuring sticks to kind of see if there was what the charge range would be if the Tully Cavaliers decided to try and get into the Rangers. The problem with that is that I can't quite go 100%, so I would have to go 50%, and that gives me a guaranteed charge coming from the veterans, and I don't think that's quite how I want to do things. There might be enough room for me to fit 100%, but I'm not recalling quite specifically. I know that the Tully Cavaliers are going to be leveraged a lot in order to try and maintain some of the damage that comes in from the veterans over there. I don't feel that the Sworn Brothers on top are going to be as aggressive enough for me to have to worry about them. There is one objective back there, so if Tyler wants to start scoring points, he's going to have to leave one of those units back there, and that means they're not actually doing any real work to get into the rest of the army. So Tyler was using, for whatever reason, objective tokens for his activation markers, even though he's got activation banners, is just a confusion on his part. So he tried to move up and take that objective, but realized that it was an activation marker, and now he's got to kind of formulate the rest of his turn. So just some not confused play, but just some implements kind of utilized wrong. So with the Rangers on that objective, it's not really in Tyler's best interest to get off of it. So he instead uses the maneuver position with Craster to try and get them into a better spot, so that they can still shoot out from the palisade, but they're mostly just going to stay there and hand out vulnerable while keeping that objective. I can't quite remember what is on that one, but it was beneficial enough for him to want to keep it. Plus, since we're going into turn 2, it's better to get on the board instead of give away a unit that's a little bit more fragile, that's not going to make a ton of impact on anything right now. I mean, they could move up and vulnerable the Sworn Swords and shoot them down so that they're harder to get into, but I'm really close to that objective, so it could have been a good idea. But all that really does for them is it opens up the Tully Cavaliers to charge in and take a lot of their numbers out, as they'd be saving on 6s and having a ton of accurate dice come at them, so that they'd be in a real hard spot. So the Tully Cavalier, I find my opening. I held off the Scorpion Bolt Thrower long enough to where now I can get the Tully Cavaliers up and angle them in a fashion to where um, the angle them in a fashion where they can get off of the objective. Um, I don't think I played. I need to figure that out. No, they. That's what they did. They ended up. They. I thought that I swift advanced them. I'm like, Brian, you can't do that. And then I realized that I maneuvered them and then maneuvered again, so that I could get them off that wall and ready to charge the bolt thrower, which looks really strange when you think about it. But I kind of anticipated that Tyler was going to go for the free attack instead of using the actual attack action from the bolt thrower. So I utilized Varys to stop that, and now I've got Varys taking the coin position so that Tyler can't grab it from out from under me, and that's of course going to get replaced with a sudden charge. So it seemed like I kind of put my stuff in a really rough spot. But without taking a charge from the Sworn Brothers and not having the real activation go through the bolt thrower, I'm able to get the most, or get a lot out of those Tully Cavaliers in terms of just making sure they get to what they need to. Um, I think that it wasn't a telegraphed move completely, but definitely, I think someone who's a little bit more familiar with playing against Starks regularly probably would have been able to see through the shenanigans and stop it. But it's like I said, it's tough sometimes, and you can see by the massive amount of stags that came up on that one that this bolt thrower is taking something like 13 hits or something like that. It's just insane the amount of damage that's coming at this thing. It's got, a decent amount of wounds, but at 6 pluses, Tyler rolled off screen into a dice tray, but he didn't save a single one of those at all. It was really harsh for them. So now we're going to be playing. I thought I was going to play a Robb card, but then pulled it back and realized what I was doing with myself. I think it was hit and run that I was going to try and do, where I could hit and then run back, but you have to be engaged to retreat, so it's not like I could really do anything about it. I should have Surge fourth here. I don't know why I missed it. Maybe it was the confusion on the card where I was just like, oh no, it's not. It was interrupting a move. So again, it's been a couple weeks since this game was played, so it'll be me slowing down a little bit and trying to recall all this. I really was holding out for me and Tyler to get together on this one, but it just wasn't happening, so bear with me. So now that Watcher in the Wall has been completed, the Sworn Brothers are taking up position so that they can charge whatever goes on the middle of the objective, which I was kind of hoping that I would be able to pull the Tully Cavaliers back and hold that center objective, because they do have a decent morale and there is a tree there. But I figure that since the Sworn Brothers haven't activated yet, it's going to be better for me to back out of their line of sight so they can't charge me. And these Tully Cavaliers are a lot more scary while they're in the backyard of my opponent. Like, now everything is under threat. I can go any direction I want to, and whichever 5 inches I decide to move, it's going to be a very easy charge for me to make. So now I'm kind of putting Tyler under some pressure and saying that you have to start really getting busy with a lot of your models back here, because you can't ignore these Tully Cavaliers that are just waiting to charge through your back ranks. And playing into a more elite army really helps with that. The armor saves might be a little bit better in most cases, so being able to get these rear and side charges quite easily is really threatening for any elite army. So these Tully Cavaliers can't go unanswered. The Sworn Brothers probably could have been better off kind of positioning differently to make sure that they still had a bead on the Tully Cavaliers when they charge off. Or if I decide to move backwards. The issue with that is the Sworn Swords end up getting side charges on the Sworn Brothers as well. I mean, if they would have turned a little bit more, they could have charged the Tully Cavaliers and not had a... and then the Sworn Swords wouldn't be able to get to them, but then it's still keeping him off objectives and everything like that. So it's a tough negotiation. I'm not 100% sure which Jeor cards are getting played and what they're doing with the with the Rangers here. Jeor is a commander that I've played a couple times, but his cards are still like he has the really good vow. But I think he played the one where they get to like attack with their full stat and do something else. I'm not quite sure what that something else was, but I end up taking 2 wounds on the Tully Cavaliers, and he vulnerables the saves. So I think I end up losing a whole horse out of this one, and then get 1 wound transferred over. So I was maybe just doing math wrong, but they're sitting fine in general. I believe I took my panic test there. I don't think I skipped it, or at least I hope I didn't skip it. So Sansa's gonna go and get. I think I put out another. I pulled out another sudden charge, which is another like really sneaky, tricky thing you can do with these. Since the Tully Cavaliers, like in air quotes, wasted their activation by just maneuvering twice into the middle, they still are getting 2 charges out of all this because of the double sudden charge, and with the reliability of getting it with Sansa being in the or in the army. So now we're going into these Rangers, and they don't roll real well on the onset. In the onset, I guess, but they still end up getting about 10 hits on them, or 9 hits on them. I think it was 9, which doesn't put these guys in a great place for surviving. They end up losing 8 wounds, so it must have been 8 saves or something like that. Maybe he saved 1, but tons of wounds coming on those guys, so they're already in a really difficult position in terms of trying to stay on the objective that they're holding. So this is just another unfortunate side effect of not playing games for a while. I think the reason why Tyler didn't turn his Sworn brothers the other way around was because he had thought that he could pivot before he decided to nominate his target for a charge, but that's not quite how those rules shake out. You have to nominate the target that's in your line of sight and then pivot however you want or need to make that happen. So they unfortunately do not get the chance to get into those Tully Cavaliers. It might have been a very different set of events had the Sworn brothers turned in a fashion to where the Tully Cavaliers could get charged right away. Next up, the Sworn Shield or Sworn Swords end up just maneuvering to take the objective, and Tyler goes for a long bomb charge. Now, I know he only rolled 1 die here and he's on the corpse pile, but we kind of shorthand things a little bit to where the pivot would have made it so that he needed about a 5 to get there, or maybe even a 4 at the time. So going along that line and then snapping, when you snap to the 50% or 100% sides, that doesn't count as having gone through the corpse pile. So it looked like a wonky charge, but it was just a real shorthand one. So those guys made it with no real problems. And I think this is another one of the Jeor cards that let him roll full dice, even though it's not super pertinent. But there was one other effect on it that comes into play, and I can't for the life of me remember what that effect is. But the Sworn Shields are kind of like, or Sworn Swords, I keep saying that and mixing it up, but they were kind of destined to not do super great here. I really just wanted them to be a body to get on that objective and bait out the charge so that the Tully Cavaliers could get into those veterans, because the Tully Cavaliers are going to be the ones that are the best suited for that. And based on the way things are going on that middle area of the screen and the top part, the Sworn Swords are engaged with the veterans. The Rangers are engaged with the Tully Cavaliers that have almost obliterated them. So that whole side is basically my playground right now for these Tully Cavaliers. They don't have to worry about anybody getting into them. So I checked some line of sight from the veterans to see if I get in the front or the side with that handy laser from, I think it's Broken Egg Games, which I'm not sure if they still have any in stock or not. Those things are great for being able to be used to determine that really easily without having to sit there and put like a straight edge ruler on it or something. They're very beneficial. So based on how I'm maneuvering here, I don't think that I can I don't think that I can avoid the corpse pile, which doesn't matter so much because I don't roll a 1 or a 2 on that. So I get in on the side, and now the veterans are going to get a ton of attacks. Oh, the Jeor card, Unwavering Conviction, was the one, and it also does like a Winter's Coming thing where you can't play cards also, which is not a terrible thing for the Starks, but there are some things they can play in response, like the North Remembers. But the veterans are taking a ton of damage on the side, and it's at -2. So these guys are saving on 5s instead of 3s. So this couldn't really have gone better for me in terms of where they decided to position. I think that if they would have gone 100% with the Sworn Swords, they probably would have been a little bit better situated to kind of defend from, at least distance wise, from the Tully Cavaliers. But with me rolling that 5 and the 6, it didn't really matter where they went. Maybe if they, because if they snapped to the other side of 50%, they'd be off the table because that objective's pretty close to the edge. These hits were from counterattack, which ended up doing a decent amount of damage. We kind of balanced out nicely, I think. Well, he lost a rank and I didn't, so there's the big difference there. And he failed his morale test, which isn't super great for him either. But the counterattack did 3 wounds to me, and the Tully Cav charge did 6 wounds in total off of that. So it was a pretty intense round of combat for those veterans. I don't think they're going to be hanging around much longer, and I think now they might have to try and focus on the Tully Cavaliers instead of the Sworn Swords. So the Sworn Swords are just going to keep scoring that objective, because one of the other things about 1.5 is contesting, and I really needed to make sure that I got 1 rank off of those veterans, because if I didn't, they'd be contesting the objective that the Sworn Swords are holding, and I really don't want that to happen. And we find out here that the Sworn Swords are kind of out of luck. They are movement 5, and they're outside of 11 inches from the Tully Cavaliers that are in Jeor's unit, so they can't even get that charge off, which is unfortunate for them. So they just take the best they can right now, which is just holding up that middle position and hoping to try and get the points on me. I am contesting the Rangers, so there's no points coming from them, and the Sworn Swords in the back are scoring a point at least. So they are... Tyler could set himself up to get 3 points by the end of this turn, but with me having the 1 point already for wiping out the bolt thrower, he's already kind of on the back foot, and I should be scoring at least 2 points this turn because there's a couple objectives I have access to. So this is Robb's unit going into the Sworn Swords, and unfortunately they disorder, which is not really what I was hoping for on this one, but there's not much you can do about it. I do elect to do Stark Fury because since I disordered, I really need to make that hit, and I think some of you might be saying, oh, you can't use tactics and orders on disordered charges, but Stark Fury isn't any of those. It's just an ability. It's kind of in that weird wishy-washy world of it's not an order and it's not a tactics thing. So on a disordered charge, you can still do it. And of course, I would lose 3 guys from Stark Fury. So we really just traded bodies on that one. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be contesting Tyler on this one. If I had gotten a not disordered charge, that might be different. But what can you do? We did the best we can. So now Ghost is coming up. And Ghost wants to get in on this action too. He is outside of 6, which maybe I could have pivoted this to make it a little bit easier, and I'm just like, I don't want a 1. So I get my 1. He fails his charge, and I took a panic test, but I was being a little bit hasty and short-handed it, and I was like, no matter what, he's not going to fail. He's got a 2-up morale, and the Tully Cavaliers and the corpse pile cancel each other out. So I just rolled 1 die, and I was like, oh yeah, never mind. So there he sits. I think I should have backed up an inch at this point. When you fail your charge, I don't think you're outside of the rules for being within 1 inch. So Tyler does score 1 off of the top unit of sworn swords that are hanging, or sworn brothers that are hanging out there on that objective. And I end up scoring 2 from objectives that turn because I'm not contesting the sworn brothers that narrowly escaped. So Tyler scored 2 points total out of that one. I think we put the 3 token down. He didn't kill any units of mine, and I don't think we recognized that that I was contesting the objective up top, because we did say that. Well, no, everything worked out right because the middle one gives you 2, and I think Tyler rolled his panic check in the dice tray and ended up passing it, being only -1. Or I think he's -2 actually, get based on his positioning between those the corpse pile and the tree, but I'm still a little foggy, can't quite remember. So I have the first turn. I think none of the Tully Cavaliers don't really do a whole lot in close combat. So I ended up playing Northern Ferocity on them. So they get 6 dice, and they're still sundering. So it's not the greatest in the world, but it's still something to help them kind of get out of combat. Tyler rolled pretty decent on the saves for this one. So I used the vulnerable token and forced him to re-roll. Not a whole lot came out of that in terms of damage. But what I did get to do here is my hit and run deal finally. So now the Tully Cavaliers, that the tactic or the hit and run card just says after you make an attack action, not your activation. So they did back up after getting that free attack so they can charge in again. And then you'll see it through the magic of editing seamlessly that the Rangers did fail their panic chest. We forgot about that. So I think what ended up happening really was the battery in my camera died, since I've kind of switched over to this like new camera that I'm using, and I was keeping a good track of the battery on my phone, but I just missed it by a notch, so I just had a small gap in there. I'll have to get better about paying attention to those, but not a ton happened here. So it looks like the Rangers are activating, and they used their order to get the vulnerable token on Robb's unit before they got out of range, and decided to charge the Tully Cavaliers, so I didn't get the chance to charge them first, because they undoubtedly would have just crumbled from the charge. So at least this way it becomes more of a it's a little bit more of a struggle for me to kill that last Ranger. And for what it's worth, with the 3 attacks that he did, I lost enough to lose another rank. So it's not looking real great for those Cavaliers that are back behind him right now. So I opt to take the best option for me. And the Tully Cavaliers still haven't activated. So they take the maneuver position, not only just to turn on my cards, but also to make sure that I can get the charge on that Ranger unit that's just kind of trying to bait me out. So that was a nice turn of events in terms of like dancing back and forth of the I need to trap you and I need to get away from you. So it was a definite, it was a fun little turn of events, I think, at least in my opinion. So I think the negotiation that Tyler's trying to do is like, who does he heal? He's got 2 units that are horribly beat up. The nice thing about Amon, though, is that he can split the ability and the zone. So I use a Varus token to stop the zone effect, because I think no matter where Tyler goes with Amon, he's not going to be getting a ton of wounds back from the unit. Like it's 2 at max right now. Since none of his infantry is down low enough. So it was almost like beneficial for me that I didn't do as much work to these units as I had really wanted to. And Varus is just a powerhouse in this list. I know that some people might poo on him a little bit or think that he's... I don't think anyone's thinking that Varus is not good. Like, Varus is a good NCU. But in this list particularly, when I'm wanting to really put a lot of pressure on my opponent, being able to sit there and say, no, you don't get to heal, no, you don't get to attack, no, you don't get to retreat on a 3+ is really helpful. Like, I think it really turns up the efficacy of this list and makes it just really frustrating to play against. So if you want to switch him out, like I'd said in the tactics video, go for it. But I think you're seeing him play out here in that he shut off a big attack from the bolt thrower, and now he's just shut off Tyler's option to get back in the game. I mean, not that he's out of it by this point, but I guess the better way to say it is that I stopped his ability to rubber band, because he is kind of on the back foot with taking casualties and having really effective units that aren't doing anything, namely that unit of Sworn Brothers that's up at the top of the screen. They're holding that objective fine, but their real purpose is, they want to fight. They want to get into the mix of things and kill stuff. Whereas my 5-point Sworn Swords are perfectly fine with them not charging while they're back there holding that objective. And I think you saw me nudge Grey Wind back because I did deal with the 1-inch breather order, or breather rule, not order. So I think for me right now, I'm having a very difficult time figuring out what it is that I want to do. There's a lot going on right now in terms of activations that I have available to me. There's the Tully Cavaliers that can do stuff. Maybe it isn't my turn right now. Tyler put down Amon. Oh yeah, Tyler put down Amon, and then I attacked with the Sworn Swords into Jeor's unit. So now I'm down to 1 rank, and now he's trying to figure out what he's wanting to do, and it's just really figuring out which vow he wants to put on Jeor, or what he wants to do. So I think here he went for Sword in the Darkness, like he went to go find it, and just so that he could have it for later turns. And thankfully, the Sworn Swords are holding it out on that objective. So I couldn't be happier with what they're doing right now. The Tully Cavaliers, though, I really would like them to be able to charge Jeor's unit in order to try and clear those Sworn Swords off, so that they don't have to worry about Jeor killing them down. But as long as they're holding points, that's all I want. So if I can get one more body off of Jeor's tray, then I'll be scoring that objective again, and that'll make me very happy. So next up, it looks like I'm taking Robb's unit into the Sworn Brothers again. I want to kick a rank off of them so they don't do as much damage to me. I use Stark Fury again, only losing 1 guy this time, but I'm still not getting a ton of hits out of them. They're just not really putting up the numbers right now. But they do their job at least, in that Tyler's now lost 3 bodies. So that means that Craster can't heal them back up to full ranks, and or their 3 ranks, right? So it means that Robb's unit's going to have a little bit easier time sticking it in there, because the drop off on the Sworn Brothers is pretty, it's not nothing when it comes to the Sworn Shield staying alive. So this is the first Varys whiff that I have. Tyler's not sitting on a ton of cards in his hand, and I just wanted to kind of stop that from happening. So it was, instead of using the zone, he used Craster to heal up the horses and draw a card. And I took a moment to try and figure out if Grey Wind could maneuver in a way to where he could fit in for a charge, and he can on the side. So I decided to go for that because I do want that vulnerable token, and I really wish I would have done this before Robb's unit attacked, but I think I just kind of had my wires crossed in what I wanted to do with myself. So that was a mistake on my part. Not so much a mistake, but more so just some inefficiency. I think the real thing is I miss the bond that Jon has with Ghost. It's so good, but unfortunately it seems like none of the other Stark kids have it. So again, the Tully Cavaliers still haven't done their charge at the top of the screen, because with the Rangers having activated and nothing really threatening me up there, I don't feel that it's really important for me to get back into them right away. So I've just been kind of doing the things that are a little bit more pertinent. Actually, I don't think any of the Tully Cavaliers have activated at this point. But I think we had a panic test from this was another dead battery issue, so I really dropped the ball on this one. But you can see that Sworn Brother unit must have failed a panic test and lost a couple more guys. So now they're not down to 1 rank, but they're pretty low in terms of guys left in that unit. So they're losing their efficacy by the second almost. So Jeor plays his search your library for any tactics card and put it on a unit. And I think on this one he goes for shields that guard the realms of men. I'm not 100% sure which vow went on them here. When I film remotely, it's really difficult for me to try and use some of the tools that I've been experimenting with to try and get a better bead on which cards are being played. But I think the quality of the image, maybe some of you who are a little bit more familiar with these tactics cards commander cards can just like see the words and recognize it. But I don't play Night's Watch enough to be able to recognize them just by their titles, by seeing the number of words on them. So that's just me. So we get 9 hits here on this charge. I'm pretty sure the Rangers are going to be pretty toast at this point. I guess they're not going to be toast. They have 8 wounds left on that tray, so it's going to be, if they roll a couple 6s, they could stick around, but they need at least 2 to do that. And unfortunately, they don't get that at all. So the Tully Cavaliers have plowed through that unit and can now surge forth to try and help back up the unit of Sworn Brothers that's really taken a lot of hits here. So at this point, for me, I would feel like I've kind of got that upper portion of the table on lockdown. Tyler can't quite get into the Sworn Swords that are holding the objective up there, and he can't, if he decides to come off that objective to go help out the Sworn Brother unit that's dying, or just having its numbers whittled down very slowly, he risks setting himself up for a charge with the Tully Cavaliers, and he also risks taking a side charge from the Sworn Swords that are on that objective. So you can see Ghost died, and I'm fine with that because I have the North Remembers. So now these Tully Cavaliers get a chance to heal since I own the sword, and they also get their activation token removed. So that the Sworn Brothers that are in front of them are not long for this world, because they're Sundering and neg 2 to their armor save means they're rolling 6s to save, and that's it. So I'm pretty confident in their ability to wipe this unit. They've only got those 5 wounds left, and they are vulnerable. So no criticals on that one, but I do manage to hit with 8 of those attacks. So the Sworn Brothers are going to have to pull some serious magic in order to get them to survive, which they don't, which is not surprising. And the Tully Cavaliers now are taking the objective that they wanted in the first place, which was the -2 to your panic test, but you scored double points out of it. And our points right now are sitting pretty close looking ish, but my presence on the table is quite dominant, I would say, to where I'm close to closing this one out. So I think after killing that Sworn Brother unit, I didn't put out the point that I gained from killing them, so I think I'm at 6 right now. But I could be at 5, and I'm better about keeping track of my score in games than I am recognizing which which coins I put down right away. So the Tully Cavaliers, they have Sundering-ish because they're in the side, so 6 attacks at Sundering isn't a terrible thing for me. So we do manage to whittle Jeor's unit down enough to where we can score the objective that those Sworn Swords are holding. They're doing a phenomenal job keeping that together. And Tyler does decide to call this one because he sees the writing on the wall. I think at the end of this turn, I ended up scoring 4 points total, so I go up to 10. So it wasn't even that he saw the writing on the wall, it's just that I closed it out on 10 points at the end of the game. So that was a good example of how to utilize the Robb Stark list and the Tully Cavaliers. I think if I had caught Tyler at a different time where he's got a little bit more like not understanding, but when he's played the game a little bit more, getting back into the swing of things, I think it would have played out a little differently. But the way that things kind of shook out there, those Tully Cavaliers really did the lion's share of the work, and the Sworn Swords did what they were supposed to do. They tie up things and hold objectives for very few points.